the weeks that followed, Norman and Janet grew closer. Their professional partnership evolved into something deeper, as they leaned on one another for support. Their bond, forged in shared struggles and mutual respect, began to flourish. However, just as life seemed to settle, a new challenge surfaced. One morning, Norman opened his email to find an unexpected invitation from Layla. But it wasn't just any invitation, it was to her wedding, and the groom was none other than Jason. The news felt like a punch to the gut. The thought of attending such an event was humiliating enough, but the stakes grew even higher when a prominent Chinese investor called shortly afterward. The investor informed Norman he would be in town for the wedding and expressed interest in meeting to discuss a potential partnership. This opportunity could be transformative for Norman's firm, a chance to secure a multi-million-dollar contract that would uplift his business and benefit the community, but it also meant facing Jason and Layla head-on. On the call, the investor casually remarked, "Norman, I'm looking forward to the wedding. I'm impressed you and your ex-wife are on such friendly terms despite the divorce. I'll be leaving soon after the event, so I hope to catch you there." Norman, though hesitant, couldn't afford to let this chance slip away. Summoning his resolve, he replied, "Of course, I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it." As he ended the call, a knot of dread formed in his chest. How could he navigate this tangled web of personal and professional stakes? The thought of seeing Jason smugly celebrating his marriage to Layla was unbearable. Yet Norman knew he had no choice but to attend. The day of the wedding had finally arrived. Norman, composed yet slightly apprehensive, stepped into the grand hall of the upscale restaurant with Janet on his arm. She radiated poise and elegance in a flowing dress that accentuated her natural grace, while Norman, in a sharply tailored suit, exuded quiet confidence. Together, they made an impression that was impossible to ignore. As they entered, the hum of whispers filled the room, heads turning to admire the striking pair. Janet's every detail, from her perfectly styled hair to her poised demeanor, spoke of an effortless sophistication. Norman, walking beside her, felt a renewed sense of pride, knowing how their presence might shift the atmosphere. After greeting several guests, Norman and Janet made their way to Layla and Jason, the newlyweds. With a calm and enigmatic smile, Norman extended his congratulations. "Congratulations on your wedding," he said smoothly. "May this new chapter bring you the happiness you both seek. Here's a small token from me and my fiancée, Janet." Janet, her voice light but filled with an underlying confidence, added, "Congratulations, Layla. Congratulations, Jason. We truly wish you all the happiness in the world. I still pinch myself every day, wondering how I got so lucky to be with someone as incredible as Norman." Layla's face betrayed a mixture of shock and irritation. She glanced at Janet, then at Norman, her mind racing with questions. Who is this woman? She thought, seething internally. How did Norman move on so quickly? As Norman and Janet returned to their table, Layla's gaze followed them, jealousy flickering in her eyes. She couldn't shake the image of them together. Her thoughts churned, "This doesn't make sense. He was supposed to be miserable without me. How could he find someone like her?" Determined, she resolved to dig deeper into Janet's background, convinced there had to be more to the story. For Norman, the satisfaction was quiet but palpable. He had succeeded in unsettling Layla, just as he had hoped. Yet, beneath the surface, there was a flicker of unease. The evening was far from over. The celebration continued uneventfully at first. Norman even managed to connect with the Chinese investor who expressed keen interest in his sustainable architecture projects. It felt like the perfect balance of personal and professional success. But things quickly unraveled when Layla, tipsy and visibly agitated, grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice slurred but loud enough to command attention, "I have something important to share. I've just learned something shocking about Norman's so-called fiancée." A murmur rippled through the crowd, eyes shifting toward Janet. Layla continued, her words sharp and cutting. "She isn't who she pretends to be. Janet isn't some accomplished businesswoman or a high society figure. She was homeless before Norman picked her up, and hired her as his assistant. Haley, Norman's former secretary, told me everything. I don't think it's safe having someone like her here. I want them out. The room fell into stunned silence, then erupted in murmurs. Janet, her face pale but composed, turned to Norman, her voice barely above a whisper. I told you this would happen, she said, her tone heavy with resignation. But instead of retreating, Janet rose gracefully from her seat and walked to the stage. She took the microphone from Layla, her hand steady and her voice clear. Before I leave, she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. I want to say something. Whether someone is wealthy or struggling, the most important thing is their character. It's cruel to judge people without truly understanding their story. She paused, letting her words settle. Yes, I faced hardships. That much is true. But I have never taken anything that wasn't mine. Layla, I'm glad you chose to leave Norman and Jessica, because they deserve someone who values them, someone who knows what true family means. Janet handed the microphone back to Layla, her dignity intact, and walked toward the exit. Though her steps were measured, her heart felt heavy. Norman, unwilling to let her face this alone, quickly followed, leaving the crowd and the chaos behind. Outside, under the glow of the streetlights, Norman caught up to Janet. You handled that with grace, he said softly. I'm sorry it came to this. Janet turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I told you I wasn't the right person for this, but thank you for believing in me. In that quiet moment, Norman realized something profound. Janet wasn't just an ally or a convenient partner for the evening. She was someone whose strength and character had touched him deeply, someone he couldn't imagine his life without. A speeding truck struck Janet as she stepped off the curb outside the restaurant. She fell hard to the ground, blood pooling quickly beneath her head. Norman's desperate cries for help echoed across the street, sending ripples of panic through the gathered wedding guests inside. The truck driver, visibly shaken, stammered out an apology, claiming Janet hadn't looked before stepping onto the road. Within moments, an ambulance arrived, and Janet was rushed to the hospital. Norman stayed by her side, clutching her cold hand as tears streamed down his face. Forgive me, Janet, he whispered, his voice cracking. This is all my fault. Please say something. Open your eyes. The paramedics tried to calm him, their tone grave. Sir, she's unconscious. There could be internal bleeding. We can't predict the outcome yet, but you should be prepared for anything. Norman collapsed into a chair in the hospital hallway, consumed by guilt and fear. He realized then how much Janet truly meant to him and the unbearable void her absence would leave. The doctors performed emergency surgery, but Janet slipped into a coma. Her condition was critical, and the prognosis uncertain. Day after day, Norman and Jessica visited Janet in the sterile hospital room, speaking softly to her, reading her favorite stories, and praying she would awaken. A few days later, a surprise visitor appeared at Norman's office. Walter, a potential client who had attended the ill-fated wedding, entered with an expression heavy with emotion. Norman, Walter began hesitantly, I need to share something with you. I know this will sound unbelievable, but the woman you brought to the wedding, Janet, she looks exactly like my late daughter. Norman's brow furrowed, confusion etched into his features. Walter continued, his voice faltering as he recounted his story. My wife and I couldn't have children of our own, so we turned to surrogacy. A young woman named Heather carried our baby, but when Heather went into premature labor, my wife and I were away. By the time we returned, Heather had vanished, leaving behind one child, Nora. We raised Nora as our own, and she was our pride and joy. But tragically, she passed away from encephalitis caused by a tick bite. Walter paused, his hands trembling. Seeing Janet at the wedding was like seeing Nora again. I couldn't believe it. I hired an investigator, and what we discovered stunned me. Heather had given birth to twins. She kept one child, the other she gave to us. Janet is my biological daughter. Norman was speechless, trying to process the gravity of Walter's revelation. Walter's voice softened. If I had known Janet existed, I would have done everything to give her a better life. Now that I've found her, I'm ready to help her in every way I can. Norman's guilt surged. I'm glad Janet has found her family, he admitted, but I can't shake the blame for what's happened to her. She's fighting for her life because of me. I don't know how to fix this. Walter placed a hand on Norman's shoulder. We'll help her together. I'll bring in the best doctors. Knowing she has people who love her waiting for her might just be the key to bringing her back. At the hospital, Norman sat beside Janet, her face pale and still. He gently took her hand in his voice trembling as he spoke. Janet, your father recognized you at the wedding. He's here now praying for your recovery. He loves you deeply, just as I do. I'm not speaking as your boss or even just a friend. You're the most cherished person in my life, Janet. Please, open your eyes, we need you. Then, impossibly, Janet's fingers twitched. Moments later, her eyelids fluttered open. The machines monitoring her condition beeped wildly, and Norman called for the doctors. The medical team rushed in, stunned by the miracle unfolding before them. Against all odds, Janet had woken from her coma. Janet's recovery was slow but steady. She had to relearn simple tasks, but with Norman, Jessica, and Walter by her side, she regained her strength. One day, Janet looked at Norman with tears in her eyes. While I was unconscious, it felt like I was floating in a void. But your words, your love, and the promise of family, they pulled me back. Tell me, Norman, did you mean what you said? Encouraged by Jessica's wholehearted support, Norman took Janet's hand and replied earnestly, every word. I can't imagine life without you. You're the mother and partner Jessica and I need. Let's build a life together. Overcome with emotion, Janet embraced Norman, sealing their connection with a tender kiss. Their bond, forged through adversity, had become unshakable. Janet later met Walter and reunited with her long-lost family. Though she chose to live with Norman and Jessica, she promised to visit Walter often, cherishing the chance to know her roots. As Janet settled into her new life, Jessica found the mother figure she had longed for, and Norman finally felt the peace he had been seeking. Together, they created a home filled with love, warmth, and hope for the future. With Norman and Jessica, Janet found a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. Jessica blossomed under Janet's care, finally having a nurturing mother figure in her life. The little girl followed Janet everywhere, clinging to her as if afraid she might disappear. Janet, patient and kind, brought a warmth to the house that had long been absent. Unlike Layla, Janet never demanded more than what was willingly given. She remembered her father Walter's wise words, be the anchor Norman needs, and the support he deserves. Janet embodied those words, always offering Norman comfort, love, and practical advice. Each thoughtful gesture from her reinforced Norman's gratitude for the decisions that had led him to this moment. Looking back, Norman realized how much of himself he had sacrificed in his marriage to Layla. Her constant demands had left him drained, and he often felt like little more than a servant in her life. Janet's genuine care and affection reminded him that relationships could be built on mutual respect and kindness. For the first time in years, Norman felt peace or relief that Layla's departure had been a blessing in disguise, despite the heartbreak it had caused. Meanwhile, Layla's life was unraveling. Her relationship with Jason, once a thrilling escape from her dull marriage, had become a source of misery. The fallout from their public humiliation at the wedding sparked a bitter argument. "Are you happy now?" Layla, Jason shouted. "You just had to invite Norman and make a scene, didn't you? Congratulations, you managed to turn his life into the center of attention while we became a laughingstock." Layla, stunned into silence, realized her plans had backfired spectacularly. Her frustration festered, and she turned to alcohol to dull the sharp edges of her failures. Bitterness consumed her, and she began lashing out at Janet in petty ways, trying to harm Norman through her. Ironically, her attempts to degrade Janet only highlighted Layla's own failings. To her dismay, Janet's identity as the daughter of a powerful construction magnate became public knowledge. Working alongside Norman and Walter, Janet spearheaded innovative projects that gained widespread acclaim. Her contributions only elevated Norman's reputation further, leaving Layla stewing in regret. The fairy tale she'd imagined with Jason had crumbled. His charm faded, and her doubts grew. Layla found herself wondering, if he betrayed his closest friend, what's stopping him from betraying me? Jason, grappling with his own regrets, saw Layla in a harsher light. If she could abandon her husband and child so easily, what kind of future do I have with her unable to endure the toxic relationship any longer? Jason left the city, determined to rebuild his life elsewhere. Layla was left alone, her once glamorous life reduced to rubble. She spiraled deeper into despair, haunted by the realization that she had destroyed her one chance at true happiness. Desperate to undo her mistakes, Layla fixated on winning Norman back. She loitered outside his office, flooded him with calls, and even tried to involve Jessica in her schemes. Norman, however, was resolute. "Tiffany," he said firmly, "stop this. Stop calling me. Stop waiting outside my office. You ended everything we had when you betrayed me and abandoned Jessica. I've moved on, and so has she. You don't get to disrupt our lives now just because you regret your choices." Despite his clear rejection, Layla clung to the hope that Norman still harbored feelings for her. But as her desperate attempts to reconcile failed, her obsession turned darker. One evening, after consuming far too much alcohol, Layla made a reckless decision. Fueled by resentment and despair, she got into her car and drove toward Norman's house. Her thoughts were clouded, and her anger boiled over. Before she could reach her destination, her car veered off the road and slammed into a tree. The crash's echo jolted Norman, Janet, and Jessica, who rushed outside to find Layla injured and disoriented. Bloodied and staggering, Layla stumbled toward them. Her voice was frantic and slurred as she cried, "Norman, you need to come back to me. I'm the right one for you. Let's leave this manipulator behind and be a family again, just you, me, and Jessica." Jessica's small voice broke the tension. "Mom, you're wrong. You've had too much to drink, and you're not thinking straight. I don't want to leave, and I don't want you to stay. Janet has been good to us. Please don't talk about her like that." Hearing her daughter's words, Layla tried to storm forward, but her legs gave out and she collapsed onto the ground. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Paramedics arrived and rushed Layla to the hospital. Watching the ambulance speed away, Norman knew that this marked the end of Layla's destructive presence in their lives. Jessica clung to Janet's side, her tears reflecting a mix of sorrow and relief. The family resolved to move forward, leaving behind the chaos and hurt that had once defined their past. Together, they focused on building a life rooted in love, understanding, and hope for a brighter future. The ambulance arrived swiftly to take Layla to the hospital. The gravity of her actions and the tragic outcome of her condition left everyone in shock. Norman, though deeply saddened, couldn't help but feel a complicated sense of relief. This incident marked a significant turning point in his life, pushing him to fully embrace his role as both a father and a partner. Janet, steadfast and nurturing, stood by Norman's side, offering him strength and guidance. Together they became a source of unwavering support for Jessica. With gentle compassion and clarity, they explained the situation to her in a way that eased her young heart. At Layla's funeral, Jessica wept openly, her grief spilling out in waves. Her heart bore the weight of loss, yet through her tears, she began to understand that her mother's own choices had led to this tragic conclusion. As the months slipped by, the bond between Janet, Norman, and Jessica only deepened. Their home became a haven of simple joys, filled with shared moments like cozy movie nights in the warmth of their living room. Laughter echoed in the spaces that had once held pain, and a sense of comfort replaced the shadows of their past struggles. Under the loving care of her father and Janet, Jessica began to heal. The void left by her mother's absence was filled with love, security, and hope for a brighter future. Slowly but surely she embraced life again, her smile reflecting the happiness she rediscovered in their family. Janet's kindness, and steadfast presence made all the difference. Together they forged a true family, one built on the foundations of unwavering love, mutual respect, and profound compassion. Their home became a sanctuary where resentment and bitterness had no place. Instead, it was a space of warmth, loyalty, and the simple joys of being together. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, forgiveness, and transformation. This story is more than just words, it's a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the profound impact of compassion in family. Through Norman's unwavering dedication to Jessica and Janet's quiet strength, we witnessed the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Together they rebuilt their lives from betrayal and heartbreak, proving that even after the darkest storms, a brighter day is always possible. Layla's tragic downfall serves as a poignant lesson on the consequences of choices driven by resentment and anger, while Jessica's growth reflects the hope that arises from love and support. At its heart, this is a story about second chances not just for individuals but for the bonds we choose to nurture and protect. We hope this story touched your heart as it did ours. If you enjoyed this journey, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales, and share it with friends and family who might need a little hope in their day. We'd love to hear from you. What did you take away from this story? Did Norman's strength inspire you? Did Janet's compassion remind you of someone in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know how this story made you feel. Your engagement means the world to us, and it's through your support that we can continue to create content that resonates and inspires. Together, let's celebrate the stories that remind us all of the beauty and resilience of the human heart. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, forgiveness, and transformation. This story is more than just words, it's a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the profound impact of compassion and family. Through Norman's unwavering dedication to Jessica and Janet's quiet strength, we witnessed the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Together, they rebuilt their lives from betrayal and heartbreak, proving that even after the darkest storms, a brighter day is always possible. Layla's tragic downfall serves as a poignant lesson on the consequences of choices driven by resentment and anger, while Jessica's growth reflects the hope that arises from love and support. At its heart, this is a story about second chances not just for individuals but for the bonds we choose to nurture and protect. We hope this story touched your heart as it did ours. If you enjoyed this journey, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales, and share it with friends and family who might need a little hope in their day. We'd love to hear from you. What did you take away from this story? Did Norman's strength inspire you? Did Janet's compassion remind you of someone in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know how this story made you feel. Your engagement means the world to us, and it's through your support that we can continue to create content that resonates and inspires. Together, let's celebrate the stories that remind us all of the beauty and resilience of the human heart. Thank you for being here, and we can't wait to bring you more stories that touch your soul.